Have you experienced financial trauma? Did you even know it was a thing? Today, we are going to talk about what financial trauma is, what causes it, and what you can do to begin healing yourself from financial trauma. It's Unsermon with Kat Kim. For those of you that are new to me, I am a spiritual teacher, leadership coach, founder of the School of Divine Confidence. I'm the person that's going to help you overcome your fears, blocks, and shame so that you can step into the best version of yourself and truly make a difference. During these episodes, together, we decondition, we decolonize, we dismantle, we undo, we unsermon, right? There's no Bible thumping. There's only storytelling, lots of swearing, and of course, lots of spirit. I have an amazing guest on our show today. Her name is Chantel Chapman. She is known for her cutting edge, relatable, trauma-informed money guidance. She is the co-founder of Trauma of Money, and the founder of What the Finances. Welcome, Chantel Chapman. It is so good to have you.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just want everyone to know that when I found you online, because I Googled financial trauma and your stuff came up. I watched one of your webinars and I was like, oh my God, this girl, what she is talking about is so aligned with what I have been talking about, just kind of the extractive system of capitalism that's really just fucking us all up, right? And everyone who follows me knows that I'm very much a proponent of undoing all of that stuff. So when I found when I found Chantel, I literally messaged her on all the channels. I was like, IG, email. I wanted to get under your radar because I really wanted to have you on. This is going to be such an amazing conversation.
Thank you. I'm really grateful to be here in your space.
Yeah. And so everyone who's been listening in on our previous episodes, you guys know that in this entire month has been dedicated to money shame and financial trauma, because as I am on this trajectory of growth, I am being hit really, really big with my personal money shame. I was very transparent, and I even shared with you, Chantel, a little bit of my history about my family's, my father's gambling addiction. And he left us with $250,000 in debt. And there's been fraud. There's been a lot of just, family members betraying each other. And it's been really, really hard for my family. It's literally torn my family apart. It's a big thing. And now this is all coming up for me. And I wanted to be very open and transparent about my journey. And I think you just have so much. I am literally about to learn from you today. So tell us about how would you define money trauma or financial trauma?
Thank you so much for sharing and sharing again a little bit about your story with your relationship with money. And I guess the first is to define trauma, right?
Mm.
Because sometimes when we hear that word, we might think trauma is something big that happened to us.
Mm.
But trauma can be something that happens in our lifetime that maybe happened too fast or too soon, or we weren't prepared for. And it can basically impact our nervous system and impact our sense of safety or our sense of worth. So that's essentially what trauma is. We often reference trauma as big T trauma or little t trauma.
Oh, got it.
Trauma is like something big that happens, and little t trauma can be something like you're in math class in grade 3 and your teacher calls on you and says, do the multiplication tables in front of the class, and you get it wrong and the entire class laughs at you.
Oh.
It could be something like that, or it could be something like your parents arguing about money in front of you as a child. So just defining first what trauma is, and then what is trauma of money? Well, it's kind of twofold. So trauma of money sounds like trauma that comes from money, and that is a thing. And then there's trauma that impacts our relationship with money. So both happen. And on my journey, I'm a financial literacy educator. And on my journey teaching financial literacy, I realized that most people take on a lot of individual shame around their relationship with money. So shame meaning like I am bad versus I've done something bad. So let's say I have debt, therefore I'm terrible at money. And they take on this like individual shame, and they believe that it's truly their lack of financial literacy. And we also see it in so many, like in government organizations and schools. They're like, let's invest money into financial literacy, and you teach people financial literacy, but oftentimes the behavior that maybe was negative around money will change for a little bit, but then they might fall back into the old patterns. So as a financial literacy teacher, I really wanted to explore, why are we falling back into the old patterns? Because the behaviors like racking up credit card debt, gambling, overspending, financial avoidance, being financially dependent, these are secondary problems, and we want to find the primary problem, right?
Yeah. So how does someone who is experiencing this, like how would they be experiencing exactly what you're talking about here? Like what would be going on in their mind in this moment?
Well, I mean, that's a hard question to answer, because the trauma that can impact someone's relationship with money is so layered. The behaviors are so layered.
Right.
So for instance, one thing I see all the time that's so common is spending. And
what?
Overspending.
Oh, overspending.
And actually compulsive spending. So compulsive meaning you're doing it in a way to escape pain, which I think a lot of our spending is, we're doing it to escape some sort of discomfort. They say that there's research that says that it's just as common as anxiety and depression in the US, compulsive spending. So that's one I see all the time. But why are they compulsive spending, right? And compulsive spending may be associated with like codependency or addiction or chasing dopamine. So it's really so hard to say until we like, first we identify the secondary problem, which is like, I'm an overspender or I've got debt. And then we try to find the primary problem. So the primary problem, that's where we do the trauma exploration. That's where we explore layers and the different narratives.
Right.
And so when I created this kind of method and came to the realization that it's not just financial literacy, my next question was, what influences our relationship with money?
Yeah. Wow. What are some signs, do you think, for people to be, aware of? Like, what are the signs of financial trauma? So overspending is one of them.
So overspending, avoidance is a big one. Financial enabling is a money disorder that I see a lot. So financial enabling is where you basically use your money as a fund to people please.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like the codependency version of money. So this manifests in undercharging, anxiety when it comes to setting your prices as an entrepreneur, not negotiating contracts properly. So let's say you're negotiating a partnership with a business partner or some sort of collaboration, and being afraid to advocate for what you need in that agreement. So essentially, that is what we would call some sort of disordered behavior around money if it happens on a repeat and there's negative consequences.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And I know a lot of people who are listening to this can really relate to that. I know a lot of my listeners are people who are, starting businesses or who have businesses. They've been trying for a really long time, but it's like that money piece keeps coming in the way. And I think what you're touching on here is really, really important. And the thing with, and I know you've talked about this too, is in the spiritual industry, there's this whole kind of blanket affirmation around the world is abundant and all, what you need to do to make money is, just think positive, like focus on your big mansion and all this and all that. But what you're talking about here is so much deeper than that. And I know for certain that those blanket affirmations, what I call consumer spirituality or mainstream spirituality, pop culture spirituality, is not working. It is not working for many, many, many people. And those are the people that are listening to my my show here. So like you've talked a little bit about that too. Like what's your take on like the mainstream pop culture spirituality and all of that when it comes to financial trauma?
Well, I see it a lot in my industry of like in the money industry of manifesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Manifesting and affirmations, like change your mindset and everything's better. And I don't like it because I think it doesn't consider trauma. It doesn't consider individual trauma or collective trauma.
Yeah.
A lot of the power, like, don't get me wrong, I believe in the power of manifestation. I love quantum physics. I believe in the interconnectedness. But here's the thing, it works primarily on the subconscious level.
Yeah.
And it's not just thought. It's more than that. It's somatic. It's the heart-brain coherence, right?
Yes.
And so when you're in a state of trauma is subconscious. Trauma is pre-verbal, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that state of trauma, even if it's underneath, you're coping and you're self-soothing, but
Mm-hmm.
it can impact your ability to manifest. So that's one issue I have with it. The second issue I have is, it's like there's this meme that went around. Did you manifest that, or is that your white privilege?
Oh, uh-huh.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Like it also saying that, like, oh, you don't have that stuff because you're not doing the manifestation, or you're in a shitty mindset.
Yeah.
That's not acknowledging someone's trauma that they've been through. Like, that's not acknowledging, deep trauma, like generational trauma, intergenerational trauma. It's not acknowledging systems that exist that like really make it very difficult for people to heal kind of the subconscious, right? And then another thing too is I notice a lot of the manifesting kind of approaches, they're essentially abiding by the consumerism narrative.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever feel discomfort, you need to do that right away. So if you feel discomfort, you're defective.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and then soothe that right away, and there's a solution for you, and it comes in the form of obtaining something, of consuming something.
Yes.
So I notice a lot of the manifestors are chasing dopamine.
Yes.
And if you're chasing dopamine is the chemical of like something is new and exciting.
Yeah.
One good way to do like a little check, if you're chasing dopamine, if you're an overspender, is, do you really love the whole idea of shopping? And it's the exciting part is to buy something, but once you get it, you don't really care too much about it, or the novelty wears off. That means you're most likely on a dopamine treadmill.
Yeah.
Right. So one thing I talk about, even from a neurochemical standpoint of manifesting, we actually need to get into not chasing the future, chasing the consumerism narrative, but getting into the here and now, which is more the present chemicals of like oxytocin or endorphins. And these chemicals like oxytocin, when I get into oxytocin, these are chemicals that help us somatically heal trauma. These are things that I do to get into my, what we call the window of resilience, which is like community, connection, moving my body, going for a walk, being in nature, soothing my senses, petting an animal, breathing. Like these are going to release hormones that are more beneficial for manifesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is exactly what I touched on in my essay. I called it Consumer Spirituality, the New Cultural Addiction. We're literally chasing that next like high vibe from that next, miracle manifestation. And there's the part of us being addicted to that chase, but then there's also the larger systemic issue problem that's overarching this entire conversation in our entire existence in the world right now, which is the extractive consumer capitalist culture that really thrives off of us feeling insecure and dependent and unhappy and constantly it conditions us to keep wanting and wanting and chasing and chasing and chasing.
Yeah. It's a really vicious cycle, and that what you described right there is trauma of money.
Right.
It really thrives on us feeling unworthy.
Yeah.
And it's positioned the solution to unworthiness is to consume.
Yeah.
But if we are feeling unworthy and our solution is to spend money, the terrible thing about unworthiness is you can essentially become an under earner because you're worthy. So it's like the cycle's so vicious because it's promoting you to spend, but it's also promoting you to under earn.
Yeah.
It's not even sustainable. It's not even a good business model because it's you're making the population believe they're unworthy. Is to spend, but if they're unworthy, they can't advocate for themselves to ask for a raise. They can't advocate for themselves to raise their prices. They can't negotiate for themselves. They believe that they're not smart enough to invest in the stock market. They believe they need to know all this financial literacy to advocate for themselves.
Yeah. Wow. I just got chills when you were talking about, how we're describing the trauma of money, because it really sounds like a big population of the country, our world probably has trauma of money, whether it's big T or little t. And when I first came across this work with you, when I think about trauma, I think I was thinking about big T. But the way that you're describing it, I'm really seeing that this is actually an epidemic. It's an epidemic. Our country alone is 14 trillion in household debt. That is astounding. And that's a learned behavior. You know what I mean? We were conditioned to keep going, to be on this rat race. And I just know from my own experience, we're not just talking about things that happen in la-di-da. I'm talking about this shit tears families apart. It fucking breaks families apart. It causes depression. It causes suicide. It causes pain. It causes suffering. This is not just a thing that we have to pray and meditate away. This is a structural, systemic, epidemic problem issue that we all need to be aware of. What I want to bring, because you have this beautiful image, and I think this is a great time to talk about the 6 elements of the trauma of money, because this is your way of unpacking what trauma of money. Yeah. So let's unpack this. What does this mean?
Well, we call this our map of meaning. And when I had asked that question, if it's not financial literacy that is impacting people's relationship with money only, it is, but it's not the only thing. What is it? So when I sat down and I thought about what that is with my co-founder, who's a psychotherapist specializing in trauma, we came up with this model. And based on our research, we have found that there's 6 elements that will impact our relationship with money. The is generational or intergenerational trauma. So something that's that's really big in generational and intergenerational trauma is dislocation. So, if you're in North America and you think of what the indigenous lineages have been through, they've been dislocated from their culture and their land in a violent way.
Yeah.
Black folks dislocated. There's so many examples of dislocation, which results in generational or intergenerational trauma. And then if you zoom in, even in North America, let's say you are a settler or a colonizer, you've also, in a sense, been dislocated, and
Right.
not so violently, but dislocated from your traditional ancestral culture. And
Yeah.
you've come here, and there's this like collective sense of scarcity as you're building up,
Right.
your new life, right?
Yeah.
So there's something called the theory of dislocation, by a professor named Bruce Alexander, which I think is so amazing, that really links this piece of generational trauma into societal trauma, which I'll kind of talk about. But where he says that when we have this feeling of dislocation, it results in a poverty of the spirit.
Mm.
Poverty of the spirit, meaning we don't feel a sense of belonging.
Mm.
When you don't feel a sense of belonging, and there's that and plus violence in your ancestral lineage, that's going to basically create narratives that will push you into survival a little bit faster than someone who hasn't experienced that.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're in survival, which we call trauma, what happens is the prefrontal cortex basically goes offline, and we the back of the brain. So the back of the brain starts running the show. The back of the brain is the subconscious. It's the habit brain. And the back of the brain is where we see a lot of distorted thinking, like this or that thinking.
Mm.
So if let's say you're interacting with your finances and you're like, I'm in a really tight financial situation right now. I got to sell this Bitcoin. Got to, because I need the money right now. Like it's either like I don't sell the Bitcoin and I'm gonna go hungry, or I sell the Bitcoin and I have a little bit of extra money. So you go into like this or that type thinking.
Wow.
Instead, when you have the prefrontal cortex turned on, you're creative. So you can think of like, oh, maybe there's this option. Maybe I could do this. Maybe I can do that.
Right.
And you have access to more cognitive reasoning, right?
Got it.
The next one is called relational trauma. So this is trauma that happens in relation to us and another person or another party within our lifetime.
Okay.
So it would be, in relation to our parents, you reference your father was a gambler, that's going to create a sense of relational trauma. I referenced the math teacher, relational trauma. Yeah. And then the next one is societal trauma. So this is where we would categorize like consumerism, capitalism, colonization. So it's really interesting that the societal trauma is very directly linked to generational trauma too, because, talking about that whole dislocation theory, right? Capitalism dislocates us from nature. Capitalism dislocates us. Capitalism and consumerism dislocate us from feeling our full range of human emotions. Because consumerism tells me that if you're lonely or sad, something's wrong with you. You got to fix that right away. No, like I want to have my human emotions because that's what it's like to experience and be a human, right? And allow my body to naturally process that, just like an animal does. When an animal is in nature and they are about to get attacked by a predator and they have somatic mechanisms to release the trauma in the body. We don't do that when we insert consumerism. We find ways to soothe so we don't allow the body to process the trauma.
Right. We find more ways to block it and repress it. And we get that cycle continues. That's where addiction comes in. Exactly. Too much TV, drugs, alcohol, whatever, shopping, right? Yeah. For those people who are just listening to this, we have this beautiful visual of the different 6 elements of financial trauma. And we've talked about generational trauma, we've talked about relational trauma, and we've talked about societal trauma. And there's 3 more that Chantel is going to share with us. But what I love about this image is when you showed this to me, you were talking about unpacking trauma, right? And what you said earlier was spot on. When I was going through my healing around money trauma, my father's gambling addiction and all that, the initial thought that I had, Chantel, was I have to become more financially literate. That's the thing that I need to fix. That will fix all of my problems. But when I saw this, it was almost like, trauma is like when you're not looking at it and you don't know how to look at it, it's just this big thing. It's like big baggage. It's heavy. You don't know what it is. It's dark. You just know that's weighing you down. It's really hard to look at. It feels shameful. But when I saw this beautiful image, it was literally like I took this baggage off of my shoulders. I zipped it open. And then I carefully laid out, unpacked the different elements of trauma. And now I can kind of see what was there, what was causing all of this heavy baggage around me. So this is really beautiful. Yeah. So let's go. Oh, you were saying that societal trauma is tied to systemic trauma, the next one?
It is, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thanks for saying that and acknowledging that, because, one thing with the design of this image is I wanted it to look like a flower, because if someone has trauma, they're still a beautiful flower. Like, that's the thing, is you're innately worthy, right? And so it's not about like looking at yourself as I'm dark and I've got this baggage. It's just like these are narratives, right? So it's like understanding and humans love to compartmentalize. So when we can compartmentalize, it really helps us to think better. This is actually a concept called mental accounting, which I teach in my trauma money program, the concept of compartmentalization. Mm-hmm. But the next one is systemic trauma and social context. So when we think of what impacts our relationship with money, understanding that there are systems in place that elevate some and marginalize many others. Yeah. So this is like, there's some folks who have been marginalized in these systems, and they carry a lot of individual shame, like, oh, I'm bad with money, I'm this, I'm that. It's like, you know what, you can take 100% of the responsibility for maybe 10% of this. The rest, that shame you don't own. You know what I mean? And then the next one we call laws of nature. So this one is really interesting, because this is where I kind of put like quantum physics, or I put other cultural worldviews in here. So if you grew up with certain worldviews around money, but you're forced to kind of abide by maybe capitalist worldviews, there may be an incongruency, a disharmony there, right? So like, how can you bring in the cultural worldviews into your relationship with money? So I have the privilege of working with many Indigenous entrepreneurs, and we explore this so much because the Indigenous worldview around worth and value and money pre-capitalism is the most beautiful and incredible and sustainable worldview there is. Like, there's so much giving and there's reciprocity, Yeah. Reciprocity is not really a big worldview in capitalism, because it's either I take, and then there's the people that feel bad and they give.
Exactly.
Yeah. So laws of nature. We also would put some of the mindset work in here too.
Got it.
And then the last one, and I say the last one on purpose, is financial literacy, because you're in one of these triggered spots. It's very hard to sit down and look at spreadsheets or understand numbers, because your brain's like checked out, right? Mm-hmm. So this is kind of our layers that we explore.
This is so beautiful, Chantel. I love this, what you said about a beautiful flower. Even if you have trauma, you are still a beautiful flower. Oh my God, you guys. Anyone who's listening to that message was for you. That is so sweet. I mean, I just took that to heart. It's like, oh, and it's a beautiful, like, it's like, because trauma is so icky, it's so like, there's so much shame. Shame is like it's a feeling and emotion that's just really clouded in darkness, and you just want to like crawl under a rock and not be seen, and and just hide. But this, I think, and it's because I'm such a visual person, it's like coming out and opening up and being that beautiful flower and not being afraid not being ashamed of all of these things, because look at all of these 6 elements that are in play. It's not because you're bad with money. It's
Yeah.
because there's generational trauma, relational trauma, societal trauma, systemic trauma, there's the laws of nature, and then there's financial literacy. Beautiful. Oh my gosh. For those people who want to get this image, should we, well, I have links pointing to your stuff, but I just want people to really like take this in and reach out to Chantel. Go click on the links, because this is like the real deal. I mean, one thing I want to say about my show is that I am not bringing on like airy fairy manifestation, like spiritual folks. I love where you're going with this, and this is so important, I think, to the healing of an epidemic that's going across, that's global right now. And I'm such a fan of you right now, Chantel. So I want people to check this out, dig a little bit deeper with Chantel. Let's get into like, okay, if these are the 6 elements, I mean, it's nice that we have this laid out. It's a beautiful flower. And then it's like, okay, where do we begin the healing process and what can we do, right?
Yeah.
So we have another beautiful graphic. Is that where we can bring this up? The trauma of money method? Okay, let's take a look at this. What is this? Talk to us.
Yeah, so this is our method essentially, and the phase 1 we call the window of resilience phase. All these phases look equal in size, but they're not. Phase 1 is probably the deepest work that you're going to do, and this is where we explore trauma narratives. We educate ourselves on the influential narrative. We rewrite new narratives, and we find what's called our window of resilience. So window of resilience is something that Trauma of Money has adapted from Dr. Siegel's window of tolerance, who is a psychologist. And so the window of tolerance, we changed the name tolerance to resilience, because we just felt like we don't want to just tolerate the traumas and tolerate the stress around money. We want to find the resiliency, because the resiliency feels more empowering, because that's what this is about. This is about getting our power back, right? So in the window of resilience, what that means is, imagine a scale of 1 to 10, and from 1 to 3, that would be like you're feeling like frozen, like collapsed. And then from 7 to 10, you're like hyper aroused, you're activated, you're angry, you're in like fight or flight, right? So the window is in that in between, like 4 to 6, where you're like, it's the eye of the storm. So you find your grounding, you're connected to your body, you're in the prefrontal cortex. You're like, this situation is not ideal, but I can operate in a very effective way. So what we do is we find how to access that for ourselves.
Okay.
Many methods to do that. So, somatic therapy, movement in the body, gut health, breathing, grounding. There's so many different ways to connect to that window of resilience. It's basically to regulate the nervous system. That's what we're doing. We're regulating the nervous system.
Wow. Okay. I think this is the part. I love that you're bringing science into this. Even though I'm not a science person, you're explaining it in a way that I get it. Basically, before we get into like healing money trauma and doing all the things, I mean, you got to get right with your body first. You have to like settle your nerves down, essentially, is what you're saying, right? Like, where's that window, the window of resilience where your nerves are settled down, they're okay.
Exactly.
Because if you're not even there, there's no way you can even bring in any information.
Exactly. So this is our plan, like, on a micro level and a macro level. Right?
Yeah.
So when I say on a micro level, if I'm about to buy some stock and I'm feeling really nervous, I do this. I'm like, okay, window of resilience, get into my breathing. I do that. And then, or even if I'm about to have a call with, a partner to negotiate things, I do the plan. So phase 2 is my vision phase. So this is where I reimagine the world that I want. So if I'm in a version of capitalism, this is where I reimagine capitalism. Because your aversion creates blocks, right? So you can't just leave it at aversion. You need to create a solution in your mind. You operate from this place of solution. So if I hate capitalism as a business owner, and I don't want workers to be exploited, well, I can't exploit myself and undercharge. I too, right? So these are ways I can reimagine capitalism.
I love it.
To do other vision work, like this is where I really connect to the life I want. Maybe my goal is to buy a house, and like I really connect to that. I get very clear on the vision that I want for my life.
Yeah.
And then the next phase after that is the inventory phase. So this is where we take inventory. A lot of the financial disorders that happen, they have financial avoidance connected to them.
Yeah.
So just getting used to doing inventory. So if you go into a 12-step recovery program, they will tell you in one of the steps to do a daily moral inventory. They want you to face what's happening, like face your feelings. Like the more it's exposure therapy, the more you do it, the less like hard it's going to be for you. So
less scary it is.
Yeah, exactly. So doing inventory, like how much money do you spend a month? Do people know that? Most people don't.
Yeah.
How much money? What are your goals? What's your debt inventory? So you do inventory. And then the phase after that is so important. We call this the harmonizing phase. So as we do inventory, we need to forgive ourselves for what we did to survive. Well, you racked up debt. Cool. Now you're not going to do that anymore. Like, I forgive you. You did what you did with the information you have. But like, we can't move forward if I'm sitting in shame on that, right? And then after that is what we call resilient action phase. So once we've done phase 1 to 4, we can take action. I'm grounded. I'm in my window of resilience. I've checked in with what my vision and values are. I've done my research. I've collected data. Now I can take action. And then the last phase is refinement phase, understanding that we're in a universe of constant refinement and getting very, very detached from the idea of perfectionism. So you do something and be like, oh, I think I need to refine that. That's okay. Great. Do it again.
Yeah. I love this. So we've got 6 phases here. It starts with the window of resilience. That's grounding yourself, getting into like relaxing your nerves, getting into that place where you are calm, basically, right? Then you go into the vision phase. The vision phase is where you can reimagine capitalism. I love that. That's, this is what the show is all about. It's about undoing and redoing, because we can do that. We have the power to do that. So phase 2 is about reimagining what capitalism can mean to you, and what do you want your life to be like, right? How can I invite hedonism? I love that. Give us a little bit more about that. What does that mean?
Oh, yeah. So hedonism basically means like when you are choosing pleasure over pain.
Yeah.
So I love philosophy. I'm really into it. And there was a Greek philosopher many years ago who was like many, many years ago, who was like, I believe the meaning of life is to have a hedonistic life. So a happy life means happiness equals more pleasure over pain. And then Aristotle was like, no, I don't think that that is a life full of well-being. I think a life full of well-being is called a eudaimonic life.
Okay.
And eudaimonic means good spirit. So if you break down the Latin word, so daemon means spirit. And what Aristotle was getting at was that when we have a life that is connected to a sense of meaning and finding flow, like purpose, we will have a greater sense of well-being. So
Yes.
Aristotle was like, it's not just about chasing pleasure, because sometimes you'll do something that it doesn't always, it feels a little bit uncomfortable, but
Mhm.
meaningful, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so we really love this view of the eudaimonic life. But we also think that pleasure is important too. Like we don't want to move like be on one end of the scale or the other. It's always like finding the middle ground. So when we say like, how can you invite hedonism to your life? It's more like, how can you reclaim your hedonism? Because our hedonism has been kidnapped by consumerism.
Mm.
That like the access to pleasure is through consumption. So
Yeah.
my business partner and I, she's Italian and she used to work in fashion. And we have this joke, we're like, hashtag sunsets over Prada. Because in consumerism, hedonism prior would be like, Prada's going to give you the hedonism. But
Yeah.
we're like, wait, can we not just create the same experience in the internal environment by looking at a sunset that we got from Prada?
Oh,
Of
so.
course we can. It's all it is. It's like
Mhm.
external, and then an internal reaction.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Then this is kind of why this is like the crux of what I teach too. It's not about the external. When
Yeah.
you're waiting for something to happen or change or to get something in the external world, you're giving your power away. And you got to go back inside. You have to know how to create that feeling, that experience from the inside. And it's not, and it actually has nothing to do with that outside thing.
Yeah.
I love it. So we're moving away from phase two, the vision phase, into the inventory phase. This is where we're taking a look at, our financial bank accounts. We're taking a look at, what's going on with our money. This is when you are, accounting, right? You're looking at what's coming in, you're looking at what's going on, a debt inventory, it says here, goal inventory. You're looking at your bank and credit card fees, all of that. I love how you have phase one and two before you get into phase three. I think a lot of people feel like a fear around this inventory phase because it's really hard to have to take a look at the thing, and there's a lot of like anxiety that comes with it. I remember when I did this, I was, I pushed it off for years and years and years. When I finally did it, it was really hard. It took me about a month to actually like get down. And when I finally decided to do it, it took a month long to, put everything into order. Had I known about phase one and two, I think it would have made this a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so after the inventory phase, which is phase three, we go into harmonizing. This is about the forgiveness work. This is about creating the debt payment payback plan. And then phase five is the resilient action phase. This is where you are entering inventory data into a zero-based budget, setting up automatic payments, and you're opening up investment accounts. This is the action phase, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then after that is the refinement phase. You are checking back in, you're making this a pattern and a habit is what I'm seeing from all of this.
Yeah, that's right.
And it doesn't seem like this is like steps 1 through 6 and then you're done. It's like a cycle, right? And you might even be flowing in and out of these things without even knowing it, maybe. But it seems very fluid. It could be structural, it could be fluid, it could be all the things. Right?
Yeah.
This is so beautiful. Thank you for unpacking all of this. What would you say is this? So this is what you teach in your trauma of money course, right?
Yeah.
What would you say? Would you say that because I have worked with people, I've worked with millionaires, I've worked with people who don't have money, and it always seems to come down to the same issues of not having enough, lack, and scarcity.
Yeah.
Do you see that same thing? Do you see the same phenomena?
Yeah.
Do your students range across the board?
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I've got a pretty diverse group of students who attend the program. And yeah, scarcity is probably I think scarcity and having an issue with receiving, those are the two main things. But scarcity makes sense because like the exploitive capitalism is a scarcity model. Like our economic systems are based on basically the study of scarcity. So like scarcity and how we handle resources in scarce environments, right?
Yes.
So
Wow, that is so true. That
yeah,
is so true. I knew it on a spiritual level, but you just literally defined it in economic terms. Like that's exactly what it is.
yeah. So it's not like, it's less about like, you know, like in social impact businesses, which thank goodness are becoming more of a trend, is they're more focused on sustainable, right?
Yeah.
Like in traditional, maybe capitalist exploitive businesses, it's very much like competition, like scarce resources, go after it. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
that's that at its core is scarcity. So we live in we're like living amongst systems of scarcity,
Yeah.
versus honoring the sustainability of like the ecology of the world, right?
Yeah.
So of course that's going to rub off on all of us. And then if you add that to trauma that someone's experienced, trauma creates scarcity, because trauma
Right.
basically tells your brain like you're in survival mode. Survival is scarcity.
Yeah.
Um, so the shift there, even like, this is so interesting actually. A woman complimented on my hair the other day.
Yeah.
And the first thought I got was, what can I tell her about my hair that will make her feel better? So I'm like, it's so much work.
Yeah.
Like, so much work. And I'm like, honestly, I didn't even brush my hair that day. So it was a lot of work. And I'm like, I'm grateful in that way that, you know, but the thought was, if I have good hair, she can't.
Oh, interesting.
It's scarcity, right?
Yeah.
Like if I feel good in this moment, she can't. And I see it with women all the time. Like, I love your shirt. You're like, oh, I got it like $10 on the discount rack, or thanks for cooking that food. You're like, it was nothing. It took no time at all. Like, it's
Yeah.
like that. There's so many little narratives in scarcity that just like really come up. So we really truly see the world so much from scarcity. So
Yes.
you know, that's where spiritual practices are so helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Or even if like you're not a spiritual person, like quantum physics, it's like,
Yes.
what is that? My brain can't even comprehend. Like, what that means is there's something out there that's unknown that I don't understand. That is the opposite of scarcity.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I'm smiling. Not because this is like, I mean, I'm smiling. This is a smile. Me smiling right now might seem weird because we're talking about a very serious topic. But the reason I'm smiling and my cheeks are hurting now is because this is so aligned with what I talk about. It really, really is. We are operating from a place of scarcity and lack. We are obsessed with scarcity and lack. We are controlled by it, even though we supposedly live in one of the richest, most abundant countries. The truth is, we have access to so many resources, but we are convicted. We have a conviction in our heart that we do not have enough, and it's two things: not enough resources, whether it's money, clients, things, attention, whatever, or it's a lack of love. Like I'm not loved enough. No one cares about me. It's like these two things. Like it basically boils down to I am not enough.
Yeah.
And therefore, I need something outside of me in order to fill this void. And then that's, insert consumer culture, extractive capitalism, and then boom, here we go. So this is so good. Okay, I have one last question before we end, and then I want to hear all about your programs because I want people to hear about this. If scarcity is the thing, if the lens that we are looking through right now and the thing that we want to heal, I mean, we saw the different layers of trauma, so it's not something that's just like go from scarcity to this, right? So I get that. But if scarcity is a thing that the lens that we're looking through, where do we want to move towards? What would be, you talked about sustainable, but like describe the other option.
Well, I mean, like scarcity is layered, right? So it depends from which lens we're asking. But from an economic scarcity standpoint, on an individual level, I
Mm.
think where we move from is uh, like one, getting in touch with our innate worthiness,
Mm.
and finding community. And then the place of reimagining the ways to do it different that you have the power to do with your own life.
Mm.
So moving away from scarcity to me is moving into creativity and into expansion,
Mm.
right? So um, for me, because it's all about everyone's own like innate wisdom and their own worldviews. So there's not one right way to heal.
Yeah.
To find that within you. But like for me, and based on my worldview and my practices, like meditation and uh, paying attention to like tiny synchronicities, like this really helps me connect to a place that isn't scarce, because I'm like, there's just so much I don't know, like, I don't know what's around the corner.
Yeah.
Well, so that's for me from my worldview, but I encourage all of your listeners to check in with what is the opposite. When I just say the word scarcity, what word comes to mind that is the opposite of scarcity? So
Yeah.
identify the word. So for me, it's expansive, it's unknown.
It's
Um,
creativity. I love what you said about creativity because it reminds me of what you said about being in the prefrontal cortex versus,
yeah,
right?
creativity is
Yeah.
so amazing. Um,
Yeah.
and connection, community, like those are the words that come up for me. And once
Yeah.
I identify those words, then I can kind of create a plan to connect with those, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
creativity for me, I'm like, I should go do something creative.
Yeah.
I can like think of something fun and creative, and then maybe I can call one of my friends to tell them, and we can discuss it. Like
Yeah.
the opposite of scarcity.
Oh.
Well, I always tell clients who are in major scarcity when it comes to earning, I say, what I want you to do today is I want you to call 3 people and see how you can collaborate. So
Mm.
creative, and you're going to have to connect.
Mm.
And you may have to be of service. So maybe the exchange of energy is not monetary right away, but
Yeah.
maybe it'll turn into something monetary. And every time it works.
Wow.
And it helps shift people out of that mindset.
Oh, that is so good, Chantel. That is so good. Okay, I just want to repeat this, you guys. If you're in a place of scarcity and you're like, feeling like constricted, you don't know what to do, what Chantel is saying is to go into a place of creativity, reach out to 3 people, figure out a way that you guys can collaborate. Whether you have a business or not, it doesn't matter. Like, connect with 3 people and find out how you can serve each other, essentially. Get creative with it.
How you can co-create something.
Yes. I
So
love that.
if it's not a business, maybe it's like, hey, like let's learn about Bitcoin together.
Oh, that is so awesome.
Or like, hey, let's co-create an experience in nature together this weekend.
Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be specifically about money or investing. It can just be like, let's do something, co-create together. Oh, which is beautiful because that then like really kind of takes you back into that cycle, like step 1, where you're the window of resilience, right? You're like calming your nerves down. And that's like the foundational piece.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, this is so, so good, Chantel. I am going to find a way. I mean, I'm just letting you know. I'm just telling you right now, I'm going to find a way to like promote the shit out of this. I'm such a strong proponent of this. We need this type of healing. People don't even know right now. They don't even know. They don't even know what they need. But, because when you're in trauma, you are numbed out. You're afraid to take any action. It's like you're you're paralyzed. And I know that feeling so well. I've been there for so many years because of my family issues. And so I know how difficult it can be to move out of it. But I think what you're offering and what you're providing is not just really, really good information on the complexities of all of this, but you are giving a way to move out of it and a way to heal that's all encompassing. I'm a spiritual teacher, so the stuff that you're touching on is right up my alley, but you're also talking about, financial literacy, and you're talking about all the things. So tell us how people can get a hold of you. Tell us about your program, Trauma of Money, and what the finances. Love those names, by the way.
Yeah, so best way to get a hold of me is probably Instagram at Chantel Chapman, and then you can see my businesses in my bio. We have a program called the Trauma of Money, and we are an online education program. So we have two offerings. One of them is a facilitator certification program. So we are accredited with the Canadian Association of Psychotherapists and Counselors, but we do offer our certification worldwide. And we basically certify professionals who work with people and money comes up as a block. So we certify a lot of therapists, a lot of coaches, divorce lawyers, we've got a lot of folks who work at universities and they write entrepreneurship programs. So if you work with anyone in the capacity of like growth and money is a block, most likely the certification would be a good plan for you.
Okay.
We also, for the same program, we also have public enrollment. So if you're just looking to heal your own relationship with money, you can also sign up for the program. The program is 12 weeks long, and it starts March 17th. And I would love to offer your listeners a discount to the program if they use the code Unsermon on the site. So that'll get you 10% off.
Oh, that is so awesome. That is so awesome. And you run this twice a year, right? You have like 2 cohorts a year and just in case you guys don't listen to this by March, can we use this for your next one too?
Whole year for you.
Oh, yay. Okay. Unsermon is the code. You guys check out Trauma of Money. This is something I'm very interested in looking at further as well. This is such a comprehensive program. So basically what you taught here, the 6 or 7 steps is what you bring people through, right? Yeah. And do people need to be in a certain place? Like it's just open to anybody wherever they are at socioeconomically?
Open to anybody. And we will go through the layers of trauma, but I mean, we have different faculty members that teach different layers. So we've got an incredible faculty of teachers. It's very deep. It's a very healing program and anyone can sign up. We do also offer scholarships for those who are in a little bit of a tight financial situation. We do scholarship interviews and we try and find ways to work with you so no one is really turned away.
Oh my God, girl. You are just a girl after my own heart. I love it. I love it so much. I rarely get super excited and impressed at the same time. And this is one of those moments. It's just solid. It's just really, really solid. The stuff that you are teaching and providing, I'm 100% behind it. So everyone who is listening, check out Chantel. We have links in our show notes. Check her out on IG, Chantel Chapman. Is it Chantel Chapman? Okay. Go check her out. Go follow her. And let me just tell you guys one thing. Her marketing is not cheesy. It is not like icky. It is none of that. I went through the whole thing. I experienced it from a consumer perspective. It's none of that whole like get it now or you're not going to be able to ever get it again type of thing. There's just so much integrity behind everything that you do. I felt it from the minute that I came across your site. Also, I fucking love your branding. So beautiful and on point. I'm a visual person and that kind of stuff. Like I read things visually, you know, and I was like, this all makes sense.
Yeah. Branding is a very powerful tool, especially when it comes to something like money. So we always use like very bright colors and fonts that are a bit like more disarming,
Yes.
You don't want to go like, especially when we're talking about trauma of money, we don't want to use like fonts that you might see at a bank or colors that you might see at a bank because it can be triggering, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you can do a lot from a psychological standpoint in your brand.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. So we try and make it like soft, but like fun and playful.
Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally got that vibe. It's very, very interesting contrast. So
Yeah.
you guys, everyone check out Chantel Chapman. I am so, so grateful that you came on. I'm glad that I like totally was like, I'm gonna get her on this show. This is gonna be an amazing episode. I'm so excited to like get it out there. Girl, thank you so much for your work. Thank you for all that you do. I know we've just barely scratched the surface with all that you offer, but this is why I want people to go check her out, go check out the programs, and stay tuned. This is our third episode in this entire month dedicated to money, shame, and financial trauma. We have one more episode next week, but I guarantee that this is a theme that's not going to go away, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to do this again coming up. This is something that we can come back to. We need to come back to over and over and over. Chantel, thank you.
Thank you for your work. This service that you're giving to the world is incredible. So I'm grateful to be here with you.
Thank you. Everyone, check out the show notes, and we will see you on the next episode of Unsermon. Bye.